Today marks a moment in history for women. On this day, August 18th, 1920, women were given the right to vote, and this year marks the centennial celebration with the Democratic National Convention heading into day 2. 23 ABC's Alex Bell spoke with local Democratic leaders about what issues are important to women this election. Alex?
Yes, suffragette activism has given myself and women across this nation the right to vote. But this has been a century in the making, especially for women of color having the right to vote today. But earlier today, I caught up with a few local Democratic leaders. Now, one of them was a professor, the other two lawyers. All different backgrounds, all different races, all women, though, and all voters. And I asked them what they believe that women Democratic voters want to see as they head to the polls this election.
The fact that there were social norms created around the idea that women shouldn't engage in that, and that people of color and Black people shouldn't engage in that, I think really speaks to how important the vote actually is.
On August 18th, 1920, the United States Constitution finally allowed women the right to vote. And while it marked a victory and opened the door for many women, Ivy Cargile, who is a political science professor, says it wasn't until the 1960s when all women were truly enfranchised to vote.
So if it's not for the ratification of the Voting Rights Act in 1965, you really don't see women on the forefront, because it's the Voting Rights Act of 1965 that really opened up the franchise to all Americans, regardless of sex and regardless of race or ethnicity.
But now, in the same year as the centennial celebration, Kamala Harris has become the first female candidate of color on a major ticket. And here in Kern County, Democratic female leaders say this election they believe that women want to see two major issues addressed. The first being the pandemic.
Women are looking for, how are we going to deal with this pandemic? Because we need to deal with the pandemic in order for my children to be able to go back to school so that then I can also go back to work.
But they believe childcare isn't the only issue impacting women during this pandemic. Finance is also a priority. Xochitl Garcia, who is a member of the Democratic Central Committee, says she wants to see economic recovery.
The unemployment rate has skyrocketed due to the pandemic. We're dealing with a pandemic that we were not prepared to deal with. The Trump administration decimated the pandemic response team. And so I'd like to see at least some ideas. I get that we're in uncharted waters, but I'm ready to hear ideas on how we're going to move forward financially, how we're going to move forward socially in overcoming this pandemic.
And the second issue brought up by these women, the lack of unity across the nation. Robin Walters, who is the president of the Democratic Women of Kern, believes what will make women and everyone come out to the polls this year is addressing not only the pandemic, but saving democracy.
The concern about our democracy, the concern about things like the post office. We should not be having a discussion about the importance of the post office. We need to get to the polls to save our post office. Who would have thought? This is how people get their medications. Veterans are getting their medications. This is not a partisan issue, and that's why I think it was particularly powerful last night. I cannot remember another convention where you have people from both parties who are speaking on the Democratic stage. And that is a powerful thing. And so I'm hopeful going forward that there is more that unites us than divides us.